Modern Cloister. I'm Carissa and I'm here with Kevin, and today we're going to be talking about the impact that COVID-19 has had on community. If you've been joining us over the past couple episodes, you know we just wrapped up a series on community, but we didn't want to end without tackling the impact that this has really had on both the church and community as a whole. And so we're going to spend just a few minutes today talking about that.
Yeah, so to start off with the church, if you liked our last episode in our series about the future of the church and to a lesser extent our middle series on the decline of church community in America, we talked about some trends, people going to church less, that sort of thing, and I think this is going to accelerate it, just drastically. I think if you could go back a year from now, or I guess a year and a couple months, because it's going to come out in April, I think, pre-COVID, and said, what does church attendance look like? The numbers you would have gotten for 10 years from now will probably be there next year. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of people, I said in that episode about the future of the church is that the majority of people are just not going to be part of church. It's declining. It's not going to be what they do. And that societal kind of pressure, that cultural Christianity, your neighbors are going, your friends go to church, whatever it may be, it's your habit. You just go on Sundays. Mm-hmm. That's going away. And so a lot of people, haven't been to church. And they're just not going to start going again, probably. I mean, some people haven't been. We shut down March 14th, 15th, something like that. That was a Sunday that and some people haven't been to church. And of course, some people can go. They're healthy. They don't have kids. They don't have underlying conditions. You can wear a mask. You can show it to be safe. There's plenty of people who can go and just haven't, because some people just got out of the habit and they know it's going to be different. So I think we're going to see that accelerate dramatically, and I think that's also going to impact that entertainment model we talked about too, because sure, when everyone has to go and you have to go somewhere Sunday morning, it's great to go and sit and watch like a cool speaker and see some fogs and light shows and kind of be entertained for 45 minutes to an hour. But when you're sitting at your home on Sunday morning, you start thinking of in terms of Saturday morning, you're like, oh man, I got to just break up what I'm doing. I can't cut the grass at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock because I need to go. And you realize, this just really isn't very entertaining. This is not really offering me anything. So I think it's just going to really rapidly, like I'm saying, it's going to push people out.
Yeah.
There's nothing for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that I think is really telling about this past year, and it's felt everywhere, and it's not felt just in the church, but it's felt across society, is that we have seen our community, our sense of community, whatever we had of it, just completely blown up over the past year. And in that, it's really shown us the importance of community. You have people all over the country, all over the world, who have been experiencing, we've had huge increases in mental health issues. That's been documented. There's been research on it, that people are just really struggling because they're not around others. They're not out in society. They're not in person with other people. And so you see time and time again, I still run into these articles all the time about how to, here's some things to look for if you're really struggling yourself, or here's what to look for with your friends or your coworkers, how we're existing in this space. And then on the other side of that, I think we've also realized the intense failure of social media to provide community for us. And we talked about that in one of our previous episodes too, that with the advance of technology, especially over the past decade or two, we have seen so many benefits to these advanced technology areas, but then along with that, it has this promise, this allure of more connectivity, more connection. And, in the beginning of the pandemic, I think people thought it was not fun. That's the wrong word, but everyone could sit at home and they were still connected on social media, and they'd be like posting like, hey, this is this crazy thing I'm doing. And so you had this immediate sense of community, but then over time, you saw it dwindle. Like, it wasn't satisfying your soul's craving to be around other people. And I think that's one of the biggest ways that has shaped society as a whole. And so for me, when on this side of things, I'm thinking, man, the church can make a difference here. It can show up and offer people something. I think we have a huge opportunity. So, there's a counterpoint to what you're saying, and they work hand in hand. Like, we are going to experience more and more decline, but actually the church, if it's intentional enough right now, can step in and offer so much of what the society is longing for.
Yeah, I think people thought it was kind of fun. Like, oh, look, we're doing a Zoom meeting tonight and having drinks and cocktail hours. And it's like, when it's 2 weeks, like, it's kind of fun. It's like a cheesy, whatever, but...
Extended snow day.
Yeah, it's, sure. Yeah, there you go. I didn't have snow days, but yeah. It's that mentality of like, yeah, okay, couple weeks, like whatever, we'll chill, we'll do this. But I think as reality set in that our communities have just been broken. It's really no other way to say it. The connections just weren't there. It became not fun. You realize that Zoom kind of sucks. I mean, Zoom's great as a technology. We're not, not a sponsor, but they're not. I'm not knocking them, but you see what you're lacking.
Yeah, there's just such limitation to it.
And yeah, it's bad, and that could lead us in to kind of what we've been going through last year. But I do want to say I do have a little bit of hope. We talked about over our series on community and how it spread and how it changed suburbanization, people driving everywhere, that sort of thing. A lot of people have been at home. And I was just hearing a news report the other day, and they said something like 60-something% of people have met new neighbors. Mm-hmm. And we actually have new neighbors right next to us, and that's been really cool because the kids line up and everything. But one of the other neighbors, they're 2 houses down across the street. Mm-hmm. They're one of, I guess, all the houses we touch that have been here 7-8 years, whatever it is, never talked to this guy before. So he's out for a run one day, and it was kind of awkward, and that's a longer story. But I was like, "Oh, hey, man," and we were like, "Oh, yeah, you've been here. You've been here this long. I've never talked to him." And part of that was his work, part of that was my work schedule, and it's like that's ridiculous that I didn't know this guy's name. Mm-hmm. Didn't know his name, and so there is so. That kind of, like we're talking about, our hope is that local community, which local would start in your neighborhood, on your street.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
But yeah, to community, let's, you got anything else you want to say on that? Or you want to move into kind of what our last year or so has been like?
Yeah, I think let's move in, because we've been thinking about this, and the best way to really show what it's done to community is just talk about some of the crazy things that we went through. And I mean, they're going to mirror some of the things that we know a lot of you have gone through as well. And so as we were hashing out which memories to share, I think the obvious first choice was, of course, the very first Sunday and weekend that everything shut down, at least here and in the U.S. And that like third weekend in March, the 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, as things just slowly shut down little by little. My work shut down. Your work started preparing to shut down. Like little by little, all across the metro Atlanta area, like cities were shutting down, huge events were shutting down, and then we got word that our church would not be hosting, our worship gathering that Sunday. We were actually up that Sunday to serve. I was leading worship. You were going to be doing sounds. All of a sudden, we're scrambling to figure out how to have a church service on Zoom for the very first time, and I'm sure you remember all the challenges with that, don't you?
Yeah, that didn't go well.
No, it did not.
Oh God, that was that one too. I forgot. Was that where you were playing piano?
Yeah.
We cut in.
Yeah.
So I don't even think it was Zoom yet, was it?
Oh, I'm pretty sure it was Zoom, yeah.
Was it Zoom? Okay, so we were trying to do Zoom.
Again, Zoom's great, but yeah, when you're not familiar with it.
Well, and we didn't put much into it because it was only going to be maybe shut down for a week or two.
Yeah.
And it was a quick kind of sermon, and then we were going to do just you singing. Yeah, it was just me on the piano. On the piano in our house. In our house, because we were all, we had like 4 of us in the service. We had the our lead pastor who was going to be doing some. We had one of our teaching pastors doing the sermon. I was leading worship. And so there was this point at which I start playing one of the songs and singing. And for the first maybe line or two, it's going fine. But then it just entirely drops me. And so then, I'm assuming everyone on the call, in the worship gathering online is wondering, okay, what do we do next? Because she's just gone. So then we're trying to log back in. We get back in. We start again. Same thing happens. And we realize that it really actually can't withstand that much audio all at once is what we think. And so it's just one of these memories of prepping and trying to the whole pivot and agility buzzwords that are, just be flexible and adapt and just go with all the changes. And so that was the first example of that. And we, look back on that, and it's just, had we known then all we were headed into, I think it maybe would have felt a little funnier at the time. Yeah. It was a little more frustrating than it probably would have been had we known all that was ahead. But well, on that Sunday, so the prior Sunday, we had started the Keller book, the Meaning of Marriage. Mm-hmm. and we read the intro.
In our community group.
In our community group.
Yeah.
And so I said, all right, guys, church is cutting. Probably the safest thing to do is we're not going to meet either. And so we'll meet next Sunday. And then a couple days into it, it seemed clear that wasn't going to happen either.
Yeah.
So I think we just skipped that next Sunday too. And then we're like, okay, y'all, unfortunately, this is looking like it's going to be a lot longer than we had thought. So let's do, I don't think we use Zoom. Do we use Google Hangouts? Whatever. So then we just started doing, the guys would meet on Google Hangout, then the girls would meet the next week. And, pretty quick on to our point earlier, like everyone realized like this just kind of sucks.
Yeah.
It kind of worked in say maybe April where it's just like, hey man, how you doing? How's your job? Are you sick? Are you safe? That was when we were in the whirlwind of like, briefly there was, should you wear a mask? Should you not? And then do we need to worry about gloves? Like, towards the end of April, everyone knew you needed to wear a mask and gloves weren't really all that important. Just use hand sanitizer, soap, everything. Mm-hmm. People were hoarding, so we're on the call. Hey, do you have enough toilet paper? Do you have it? And of course we had, oh my God, that's a whole other thing. But we had, the twins were 9, 10 months old. And after everyone took the toilet paper, everyone took the baby wipes.
Yes.
And we were out of, luckily we were not out of baby wipes because for maybe
close.
Christmas someone gave us like 1,000 pack or something. But I would go there and she'd be like, you people know.
We need so many baby wipes. But we made it through. You were able to work some magic and get us baby wipes.
Sure. So everyone realized it just was not good. Trying to do community, and so we come August, July maybe, just said, you know what, we have this roof covering over our patio, and we're just gonna start meeting outside where we thought that was safe. And we spread out as far as we could because we just could not anymore. It just was not real. It's fine for a week if it's cool, you get to see someone's face and talk, but like it just can't go on. You've got to keep it as a church. So
one of the things I look back on, and it's one of my more distinct memories of longing for community during this, was Easter. And I know when this releases, we're going to be really close to Easter again. I don't know the exact day it'll come out, but Easter during the pandemic was such a heartbreaking experience because we were all at home. And so we had this, we weren't even with our family because it was so new, and we still have really been very cautious with how we get together. But we had this traditionally in-person service that you long for because it's one of the most celebratory days of the whole church calendar year. And we were at home, and we had our family there, we had our kids there, and we made this delicious Easter meal, and we popped a bottle of champagne, and we had our church service online together. And then we're eating this meal together, the 5 of us, and we watched this concert that was, I think it happened at 1 o'clock Eastern time, and it was in Italy, and it was, I don't remember the name of the cathedral, the Duomo Cathedral or something like that, and it was, and I'm going to butcher his name, I think Andrea Botticelli. If someone's on here and knows how to pronounce it, don't judge me for that. I should have looked it up before we did this, but there was this concert, and it was just him by himself with his beautiful voice singing in this empty cathedral. And they had all this B-roll of the empty streets of Italy. And Italy at the time was one of the hardest hit places in the whole world. And he was in Milan, wasn't he? Yeah, I think it was Milan.
Which is the hotspot of Italy.
But then they also showed these scenes of cities, like large cities all across the world that were just emptied on Easter Day. Like there were cathedrals that were empty on Easter Day. And just even saying that now, like wells up in me this longing and heartbreak for the fact that we couldn't gather and celebrate together on that day. And I hang on to that picture as one of the most poignant from that year for me, as far as longing for and recognizing that the gap of not having that in that time for sure. So, and I'm crying. Kevin's over here like, are you okay? And I'm like, no, I'm not.
Who can cry when you have ham and champagne?
I mean, you wouldn't think it's possible, but then, you hear some beautiful Italian opera music, and there you go. But I don't know. What were some of your big ones from the year that have that similar feel for you?
Yeah, so we opened back up, limited obviously. Everyone was required to wear a mask. We set up the chairs in kind of pods where families could come in or people would come in. Mm-hmm. We had a register. I think we limited it to 50 people. I don't remember what the regulations from the state were at the time. 50 people, 75, something like that. And we couldn't do communion, as far as passing out. We had these little cups with little crackers in them and little juice. And then, oh my gosh, the ones we're doing right now are just pure, it's syrup. It is awful, but it's fine. But that Father's Day, we, there was no kids. There's no kids there, no nursery, no. So obviously we couldn't come and hold 1-year-old babies and have our 5-year-old sit in the service. So I got to go. That was the family's gift to me, was I got to go, and it was kind of emotional, honestly, to see people, because when is Father's Day? Is that like middle of June? So that's 3 months. Hadn't seen anyone in 3 months, and I mean that was just that was just a wild.
Yeah, I remember when you came back home after that. Even I noticed that you just had a certain feel about you, because it had really been significant.
You realized how much you missed.
Yeah,
I think that's when it was really hitting. And then of course June, that's I think right before things started spiking again. So it was just like, are we going to be shutting down again? Is this like a one-off? And but we never closed back down, luckily. And then we actually offered kids services on the first Sunday of November.
Yeah, and that was great, because that's the first time you and I have been able to sit together in a service uninterrupted in, at that point, 7-8 months?
Yeah, right.
And so that was, similarly, being there together it was like this good weightiness to it that was emotional, and it was exciting, and it felt, there was just something so deeply good in it that you could see and taste and experience what is offered that sometimes we take for granted when you're so used to it. It was just the reminder of what the gathering is, and our worship gatherings, of course, are about glorifying God, but there is something in them for us too, and it's the community of believers that we're formed and edified and encouraged by the presence of one another, and we just miss that. And so, as we got to continue going was really crazy. And
the following week, I guess some people kind of held off to wait and see how it was going to go. And then, they did a really good job. Everyone wore masks and all that kind of stuff. And so the next week, we ended up having someone, and they sat us. So the ushers would just take you to the seat. You can't, stand in the lobby and talk to people. You come in, you check your name off the list, and they just take you straight in. But someone else in our community group, they happened to sit them like right behind us. And then someone else kind of wandered in and accidentally also sat behind us from our community group. And she was kind of unaware, running around with kids and everything. But so it was like we were sitting together again like we used to. And that was emotional too, because we hadn't seen, I guess our group had been meeting, but we had not been as a community group. So this was about half of our group together in church together. And that just felt obviously not normal. But it felt like, maybe it's coming soon.
Yeah, it gave you a little bit of hope for sure. And, on a personal note, during this year, in the background of all of this, as it relates to, our church life and our church community, in August, I transitioned into a new job. And so from the more like society and community standpoint, was taken up out of the community that I knew in my former workplace and transitioned to a new one, but I was completely virtual. And so going back to our services in November and having that community through our worship gatherings, I think intensified even the longing I hadn't been able to quite express that had been so deepened when I was just without it. Starting a new job in the middle of this was incredibly isolating. And I'm still completely remote, but I'm starting to know people a little bit more, but it's very different transitioning in the world when you're virtual. And so there were some times when I was really worried about, and I know you were too, just the mental health aspect of my day sometimes, sitting isolated. And the other day we were talking about this and realized that some of that seemed to turn around right in November. And then we thought that was really the time we started going back to church. And so the overlap there, I think, is really significant of being able to have some of that.
Have some conversations with random people in a sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know. Those were some really important moments for sure. So, but then there's also all these other things, as far as like society and family and friends go. You mentioned this before, but this has been such an interesting time to get to know our neighbors. You guys have this Dad 360 thing that happens out in the streets, which I have loved watching. But you guys have just, I don't know what exactly is Dad 360. It's a new brand term we have.
That's us. While it looks like we're just sitting in lawn chairs in the middle of the road drinking beer, we're actually in a circle so that we can see 360 degrees, so we
Mm-hmm.
know where all the children are.
Yes.
Because we've actually, in this terribleness, we've been blessed with a fairly mild, for Atlanta weather, September, a really nice October. November was warm. December was kind of warm too. So we've just been outside the whole time.
Yeah.
And I got to know a lot of the dads because with a lot of them working from home, all of a sudden they were at the bus stop. And so I'm out. I go in every day to work at 7 a.m., but I'm usually back home between 12 and 1, or I leave between 12 and 1. And so I'm the bus stop, at 2:30, you look out the window and it's like, oh, it's all the dudes. So I just always went and hung out with them, and then the kids would get off the bus and they were running around wanting to be crazy. And so we would just kind of hang out and on the weekends, and it was just a way to get to know people.
Yeah, I know it really has, and it's been in that whole vein. One of the things that's really come out of some of this, and you mentioned this a little bit earlier, was that we really started using our back patio as a place to gather people, because being outside during this time was okay.
Yeah, shown to be very safe.
Yeah,
right.
so there wasn't really a lot of risk associated with being outdoors together. And so we really, because we had put that covering over our patio, and we had some shade during the really hot months of July and August and September and even October here, but it just gave us this place to gather. And so we started doing so much in our backyard, which I think is one of the, for all the difficulties of this year, with every difficulty, there's opportunity. And I think this was such an opportunity for us to rethink how some of those things happen. So we had the first birthday party for the boys out on the back patio, and we did the big smash cakes, and they're like throwing cake all over the back patio, and we have these photos of
I had to hose it all down
of people spaced out throughout the yard in lawn chairs and little pockets of 2 as they came. But we still pulled off a first birthday celebration for the boys, and we had our community group there. I actually hosted a night of worship for the women on our worship team in August in our backyard, and we spaced everything out, and I had people come because there was such a, I knew that I had been longing for community and had been missing people and wanted to provide a space to do that in person. And so we had that. I started having people over at night to, a friend or two to come over, and we'd have a glass of wine and we'd talk about different things. And you did a bunch on the back too with people.
Yeah, it just became a good place because the weather, in a sense, didn't really, like I said, it was pretty mild, but also if it was raining a little bit, you could be out of the rain. It was just a way to keep up connections safely, you know? And what people were, people are feeling pushed, they're feeling lost, but they, you don't really want to go into someone's house. It's maybe a little irresponsible, especially at some of the peak number times. And depending on how exposed you are, I'm very exposed. Like I said, I go to work every day, and I have been since April almost. So I don't want to go into someone's house. I don't want to risk someone. And so, you felt safe. You could. I would measure out the chairs for community group, so that each chair could be 6 feet apart. So we had that distance plus the airflow and all the things they say you should do. So it's been really good, and that's been a very meaningful, having people kind of in our home. But not in our home, but in our covered,
Yeah, and I would say that really, we've always, to some degree, had people and wanted to have people in our home and have brought people into our life in that way. But I think one of the things this did was it shifted exactly how we did it. And we also would have, it would happen in the middle of the week often, too. Which we probably hadn't done much of historically. A lot of our gatherings or time with friends would be Fridays and Saturdays, maybe a Sunday afternoon for group always. But I ended up having people over on a Tuesday night randomly because you're home, and so why not? And so it shifts, and it feels like the whole thing is just more fluid. Like your life with people overlaps more and is less segmented. And
even both of our neighbors across the street and next door, got to kind of see the value of having it, and they put them up.
They did put up
over the summer
since That's true.
And because just everyone's outside. It's it's just hot in the patio. So
which
is two parts.
It is. Well, and quite honestly, and we'll wrap up here because we just wanted to share a couple of fun stories with everybody. But that's really where some of the idea for the name for this came from, because of the community that can be created around that central place of discussion and friendship and that sort of thing. And so it's near and dear to our hearts, because when we think of the Modern Cloister, of course we have this here, we have this online podcast and community that we're starting, but for us in our personal lives, it really extends past that and impacts how we have been thinking about how we as a family exist within the world. And I think that's been a big thing for our family.
Yeah, that was the whole point of the Black Cloister, which is what we're trying to model the Modern Cloister on. And cloisters were famous for having these promenades. And not promenades, whatever it is. Yeah,
Courtyards.
promenades. Courtyards and coverings and archways, those sort of things. And so people would meet and discuss out there and inside too, but they were just well known for these areas. And so it's kind of, we were thinking, God, back in September maybe, and we're like, man, we kind of have this, and that's when we really got this idea rolling, which you can listen to our intro podcast to get the full story on that.
Yeah, but it's just kind of a cool full circle into what this year has done and some of the opportunities it's brought. But anyway, we
plan to keep it going. I
think
meeting people. I think people have really enjoyed and gotten used to meeting outdoors, and I think that's going to keep going. And we'll get more use out of our cloister.
I do too. So, well, that's a little peek into what the year has been like for us. We'd love to hear what the year has been like for you. So, if you would like, share some comments and thoughts about how COVID's impacted your community and your lives over the past year. We'd love to hear some listener stories. You can find us at moderncloister.com, and you can send us an email through that website or also directly to moderncloister@gmail.com.
We're also on the Twitters. I'm the Kevin Turner, and she is just Carissa Turner.
Just Carissa Turner. Also on Instagram.
All right.
All right. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.